Hey there, it's David Gordon from TheaterMania here. It is Monday, July 13th. I always have to look and see what day it is, otherwise I forget. Tonight is the premiere on WNYC of the Public Theater's Richard II. It is a audio play version of the show that the public was supposed to do at Shakespeare in the Park this summer. It's directed by Saheem Ali, who joins me, and it features Miriam A. Hyman, who plays Bolingbroke in the production. Hello, both of you. Thank you for coming.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you, definitely.
I'm so excited to talk about the version that you guys have put together. Saheem, take me back to when you signed on to direct the play live, and how long, and what it took to come to a decision to create this particular version.
Yeah, so Oscar approached me in December 2019. We've been talking about me doing something at the Delacorte this summer, and we just talked about different titles. And then he asked me, what do you think about Richard II? I didn't know the play at all, hadn't read it. It's a play that Andre loved, and Andre had also been looking for something, Andre Holland, to do something at the Delacorte. And so I read it, and I fell in love with it. It's such a beautiful, powerful, incredibly complex, rich play. And so I started putting all the pieces together for the production at the Delacorte. And I knew that Andre was going to play Richard, so there'd be a Black king. And so I was thinking about how I would populate the rest of the world. It's super important to me always to center Black, Indigenous people of color in my work, regardless of what that work is. And I wanted to create a world where there was a Black king, but it didn't have to make sense that there was a Black king. I didn't want to set it in Africa. I didn't want to make it like an all Black Richard just because we have a Black king. Like, no, like, we can have that be a component of the world without having it have to make sense in a literal way. And then the next crucial component for me was Bolingbroke. So in the play, Bolingbroke takes power from Richard, assumes the throne. And I thought, well, if I have a Black man as a king, the only person I want to see take power from a Black man is a Black woman. And so that component of casting became really important to me. So we had a couple of conversations. Miriam is someone whose work I've known and I've loved over the years. She's such a fierce, talented, beautiful, incredible performer. And so I wanted someone who had all those qualities and could stand toe to toe with Andre Holland, you know, and take his crown from him. So Miriam was one of the first people who came to my mind to continue casting the piece. And so we were, I would say, maybe 70, 80% done with casting when March hit and COVID hit. And so everything went up in the air. And the first conversation with Oscar was, you know, I'm so sorry, like, let's talk about next summer. And then a couple of weeks later, he reached out again and said, well, what do you think of a radio play version of this? And I have to admit, the first time I heard it, my heart sank a little bit. I was like, oh, you know, fine, like, you know, let's do it on the radio, you know. But the more I got into it, the more I was just completely sucked into how incredible a world like an audio play is. And, you know, we don't have that history and legacy here in the US. And so there wasn't much to listen to in terms of like examples of American Shakespeare radio plays. I mean, the earliest one I could find was an Orson Welles Julius Caesar from the 1930s.
Wow.
Everything else is British that's broadcast on the radio. So then, so then we got together and started to put it together for the radio.
Miriam, tell me about playing Bolingbroke. Did you know this play to begin with? And like, if not, what was your first reaction when you read it?
No, like Saheem, I was unfamiliar with Richard II. I had done Richard III with the public a couple of years back. It was my first production that I did coming out of graduate school. But I wasn't super familiar with Richard II. I had done some of the Henry plays when I was in graduate school, so somewhat familiar with the lineage, the families, and so on and so forth, but I had not yet tackled this. So I was really excited when I was approached to be a part of this production and to play the role of Bolingbroke. So, and then I knew Saheem was directing, and that just made it, I mean, all the more better. He is somebody who I have also watched his work throughout the years, and just a really dynamic leader and director. And that's what you want, you know, in the rehearsal room. So I was extremely thrilled, you know, working at the Public, Shakespeare in the Park in particular has always been a dream job of mine since I saw Andre Holland and Danai Gurira do Measure for Measure. That was the first play that I saw, Shakespeare in the Park.
What an incredible production that was.
I mean, I'm glad you saw it, you know. But yeah, so I was just captivated by their performances, and I knew that moving forward, that was a place that I had to work. So I think too, like Saheem, you know, just bummed to find out that we were not going to be able to do it this summer. And it was like, wow, you know, so once the broadcast came up, the idea of that, I was with it 100%. You know, I love the notion. I'm a voiceover actor as well. So the idea of, you know, using a space in your home as a small studio to create work and this type of work, I was ready to go. So I was really thrilled. Yeah.
What is it like doing this play, which, to put extremely colloquially, is about centuries-old dead white people? Like, what is it like to put together this play now with a cast of Black, Indigenous artists of color?
It was intense because we not only had the notion of isolation, and so we were all in our individual homes on Zoom, but we started rehearsals the week after George Floyd was murdered. And so I personally had a real, come to Jesus moment over the weekend where I was like, what am I doing? Like, what are we doing? Should we be doing this? Like, what is the point? Like, you know, of art, of theater, of especially like, you know, Shakespeare for a cast that's primarily BIPOC. And so I called a couple of the actors, Miriam included, and just said, hey, I'm just, you know, this is crazy world that we're in. Like, where are you at? Do you still want to do this? Like, what do you think? And Miriam, and I called Andre and John Douglas Thompson as well. And they each said almost the exact same thing in just different words. It was like, absolutely, I want this. I'm passionate about this. Like, I need this right now, you know? And so we gathered as a collective of 25 actors and myself. And that first rehearsal was just us. And I knew that I wanted to create a space for us to just talk and be honest about where we were at and the world that we were in. And so people shared their hurt, their frustration, their pain, but also their joy and their love for the craft and their like need to engage as an artist and as an activist, and how those two things can happen concurrently. You know, people talked about, you know, you could tap in and you tap out. You can rehearse on Zoom for 2 hours, then you go out to a protest that afternoon. And so what I'm really excited about for the radio play is that Miriam and Andre and all these voices are not only lending their talents, their voice in terms of their talent, but they're going to be lending their voice in terms of their ideas and their identities. Like, there's going to be wraparound conversations in each hour of the play where you get to hear the actors talk very frankly about themselves as Black people, as people of color in this country, dealing with Shakespeare in this moment. And, you know, you couldn't have that at Delacorte. So there's just some aspects of this that I'm really excited about. The silver lining is that people's voices are going to be heard in a way that they wouldn't have been if we had just done it traditionally.
Yeah,
that's really cool. I was going to say, Miriam, tell me about the experience from your perspective.
Well, I got to tell you, Saheem, he set up the Zoom, you know, and what I mean by that is he made the space. The Zoom was our room. It was our rehearsal hall. And in the first, you know, day or so, when we were able to have these conversations, it was very intimate, you know, and people were very vulnerable and just open, and there were raw emotions. And it was honest. It was extremely honest. I like to call it hot, honest, open, and truthful. And there was a lot of that was happening. And so we found a lot of parallels between what was happening within our country, the current climate, and also within this production. So for me, I feel like, you know, as an actor, I activate with my art. And so I think a lot of us kind of came to that sort of collective idea for all, you know, different reasons, but thinking that, yes, I mean, now is the absolute perfect time to do this play. And hopefully it creates community, you know, because there will be people that normally go to see Shakespeare in the Park who are going to be hearing new voices for the first time, and they're going to be hearing them do this play that was written by a dead white guy, you know. And there's a different spin on that. And I think the spin is that it's current, it's right here, it's right now. And I think you'll be able to hear that rawness within the delivery of this piece, and hear that honesty. And so it was just lovely to, I mean, it was unfortunate to be dealing with two different pandemics. We have COVID that is present, and then we have a racial pandemic. And to have both of those just be completely at the center of what it is that we're doing, and to just communicate the truth of the text, knowing that these things are surrounding us right now. I mean, it's probably some of the most honest work that I've had the opportunity to do. And then not to mention, we're all in these small rooms. So it's kind of like solitary a bit, you know? So our way to connect was to jump on the Zoom. And then there was another lovely component of it, which if you weren't in rehearsal, you could still sit in, you know, you could still hear what was going on or participate by watching the video for the Zoom, but you just didn't, you know, distract in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, it was the best thing, that the closest thing that we could get to being in the rehearsal room. And I always like to watch, you know, process. So it was great that even if I wasn't in the rehearsal, I could still do that. So again, just hats off to Saheem and the Public and WNYC for allowing us to be able to play, you know, in this way. And just like I said earlier, setting up the Zoom.
Yeah. I just love the idea, like the theater geek in me just loves the idea of being on a Zoom call with like the two of you, Andre Holland, John Douglas Thompson.
I mean, Felicia Rashad,
Estelle Parsons. I mean, it was
just like crazy talent in the Zoom call. It's like
Stephen McKinley Henderson. I mean, it was just like the greats. And I would notice, like, oh, when with Stephen McKinley scene, like all of a sudden, like it'd be people watching. You know, people would log in because you could see on the call whose scene was when. So, because it was important to me to have a room where people could come and check in, and you had your camera off and your audio off, but you could still participate in the process. You know, so it was a real virtual room in a way that we could only have during COVID.
I hope to replicate in person.
I know, yeah.
What are the challenges of putting together? You know, Miriam, you said you do voiceover stuff too. Yeah. What are the challenges of doing something like this, like in a corner of your house? Like, were you all recording together?
Well, when we were on the Zoom, yeah, and basically we each had equipment that was shipped out to us. And actually, I still have my mic. This was like one of the mics. This was another, you know, kind of like mic. I'm a lyricist as well. So I have some of this stuff already like kind of just set up near me. So I'm not just grabbing props. Like I didn't just have it already. But one of the challenges I think was being able to reach my fellow actors. And so I think one of the things that we have to be mindful of, voiceover artists, is having a relationship to the mic. You know, it's like mic swag, you know. And so making sure that you're not too hot on the mic, that you're able to convey what it is that you're trying to, you know, convey, without feeling like you're shouting, without feeling like you're pushing. And so it was that type of intimacy that, you know, that you still wanted to create as if you were right there next to the person. But physically, obviously, you know, we didn't have that at our disposal. So I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges, like trying to reach Andre through this Zoom, but it's still being very authentic, you know, and I'm still able to be grounded. You know, there was a couple of times, Andrew Wade, who I absolutely love, who worked with us on text. And, you know, again, I'm in this little room, so I'm pacing sometimes and I'm just, you know, I'm standing on, you know, just on this concrete floor. The floors in my home are concrete. And you know, there were times when he would just send me a text and he's like, stop moving, stay grounded. And Andrew, I've trained with for several years now, you know, at Bada, you know, also at the Guthrie. So we have a really great rapport. And so instead of having to interrupt the Zoom, he could just send me that. And I know, okay, you know, lock in, let me just, you know, fold up. All of my technique comes back to me. And then you're able to execute, you know, so yeah, I would say that was probably the biggest challenge, finding that mic swag. But I think we pulled it off.
And Saheem, what are the challenges of directing a Shakespeare, not just a play, but a Shakespeare play in this medium? Which I presume you've never done like an audio play like this before.
No, it's my first time.
I'm like, are you kidding me? He does this all the time. You know?
Or I'm about to. So
I've
been stuck in this for a few months.
You're going to be the director of radio plays for the.
Listen. Yeah. Well, it's been a minute, like a few decades. The the thing about Zoom that really helped was that the actors could see each other. And so them being able to play off of each other was crucial for them, but not for me. Like when we got later in the process, I would just turn my screen off actually, because what really mattered was what I was hearing rather than what I was seeing. So they were able to play off of each other, but what I was listening for was just like what the story being told with just the audio, independent of whatever expression Miriam might be giving to Andre, what he might be giving to her, you know? And so another challenge was that when we were recording, so we rehearsed for a week and then we recorded over 3 days. When we recorded, the actors were capturing their own audio, but it wasn't the audio that we were hearing. So I was hearing Zoom audio, but that little device that Miriam just showed, that was capturing what she was doing. So it wasn't until after the fact when Miriam then uploaded her audio into Dropbox, an engineer at WNYC took all the different audios and spliced them together, then I would be able to hear what actually the microphone caught, you know? So there was a bit of a delay in terms of like, well, I think it was great, but I'm gonna have to wait to hear it. And then we had 2 days of pickups afterwards. So, and then, you know, we had a huge cast, 25 actors, and the ages range from 8-year-old Josiah to 92-year-old Estelle Parsons. You know, it's a huge range. And so everyone had to be their own technician, but also like the mic placement. And so there were numerous logistical obstacles, but everyone was just so passionate, so driven. The folks at WNYC who've never worked with actors in this capacity before were just like so generous and open and like available, you know, to assist, because one of the beautiful things about this venture is that the Public Theater does Shakespeare live and WNYC does audio, but no one had done Shakespeare on the radio. So there was a learning curve for everyone institutionally also, and a philosophical one as well. It's like, you know, if there's narration, is it more classical or is it more kind of contemporary? Like, you know, where do you veer? So everyone was trying to gather to make this thing that hadn't been made before. And, you know, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a Shakespeare play that was rehearsed on Zoom to be broadcast on the radio. You know, like no one's ever needed to do that. Actors have gathered in a studio and like can actually play off of each other. And, you know, you hear the audio that's being captured live, but we were just so many steps removed, but man, it sounds so beautiful. Miriam, I can't wait for you to hear it.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait. No, I haven't. So it's like shooting a project and then you see it all put together for the first time. But if it sounds as lovely, you know, as it did to just be in the Zoom room, I'm thrilled.
And you'll actually get to see a product. Like you'll actually get to see or hear it at least, as opposed to you're doing it live when you could only look at photos and.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I've never experienced this before in terms of doing, you know, Shakespeare. Like I said, as a voiceover artist, I'm, you know, selling products, Tide Pods, you know, things of that nature, and some animation. But yeah, I'm stoked. I can't wait to hear all of these rich voices, just the nuance of it all. Like I'm super stoked.
I think it's really cool that you guys stuck with this play, because like like in my mind, a situation like this, like COVID, could happen, and like you could see plans pivoting and being like, all right, we're going to do A Midsummer Night's Dream now. But no, you guys are doing like Richard II, which is a play that no one ever.
Well, you know, it's crazy. Saheem has mentioned this before, but the play, you know, a murder has just been committed.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, we're not doing A Midsummer. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing right now in this climate? We're doing Richard too.
Yeah.
You know, and it's tragic. There's comedy in there as well. You know, it's just a really beautiful, rich story. So I think that audiences are gonna identify with it, and they're gonna be able to find the parallels as well. You know, one of my favorite lines I say as I'm about to go into, start a brawl.
I love this.
Yeah, with this gentleman Mowbray, and I say, "Mine innocence and St. George to thrive."
Right.
I've done a lot of Shakespeare, several plays, in fact, and I cannot recall a George character coming up. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, Twelfth Night, Cymbeline, Richard III. for that to come up right now, again, is just a major reminder to me that you are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, with whom you're doing it with. And this is the play. This is it.
Saheem, Miriam, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
David.
you, David. Yeah.
People watching this, you can go on the Public Theater's website and get the stream. It starts tonight, and it's broadcast consecutively over the next 4 nights in hour-long installments. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be so cool.
Yes, it will. Yes,
I can't wait.
Thank you. Lovely talking to you.
Thank you. Great to see you.
You too. And
Take
thank
care.
you for watching.
See ya. Bye-bye.